Hey everyone, Ms. Cologne here. I'm going to explain how to find the percent of change that's either an increase or a decrease. Just give you a further heads up, my voice is still hurting, so if you are not able to hear me, I do apologize in advance. I will try to speak closer to the mic of my camera. You can also put captions and subtitles and it should work just fine. I've explained before how to find an amount if I was given the percent. However, what if I don't have the percent? You can't always use a tape diagram if I'm missing the percent. Or you can't always use the previous method I've shown you where you subtract the difference, divide by the original, and multiply by 100. There's a little bit more of that. So there's another method I would like to show you. And this is the proportions way. If I have, for example, if I was given an old amount, an original, let's say original. Let's say I was given an original number. Let's say I was given a new number, right? Because I got to compare them. And then I don't know the percent. Well, there's a proportion set up. Now, you need to remember what is a proportion. A proportion is a ratio, two ratios set equal to each other, meaning I can rewrite it two different ways. So, your percent of change, and I want you to bear in mind especially this piece of the proportions. This piece throughout the entire unit 4 would always be written this way, as given. This fraction is always, and I say this with clarity, always should be whatever the percent over 100. The reason why it's out of 100, because the word percent. Percent literally means per 100. That's literally what that means. So if I have a whole number or a decimal as a percent, you always should have it written as out of 100. Which is also how you can go from a percent to a fraction. But we'll get into that in the next video. That's always going to be standard. Now, this side of the ratio, it usually varies depending on the scenario. So for now, we're just going to focus on percent of change, either increase or decrease. So usually what you do, and you've already done this before, you have to take the two numbers and find the difference. So I would say the difference, or whatever that change is, and you have to divide it by the original amount. It is always going to be over the starting number, because that gave me the difference from that. That means how did I go from that original number to the new one, whether you went up or down. That's why you always have it out of the original. So your setup should always be like this. Now, there are two scenarios, and you will be getting guided notes on this piece. If I am looking for the percent of increase, to find the percent of increase, your setup should be as follows. You're assuming that the original number is smaller than the new amount. That's why it's an increase. So you would take new minus old, or original, and divide still by the old number, or the original, and it's still going to be set equal to percent over 100. Okay. Now, if I write the formula, the proportion format for percent of decrease, most of this really going to look the same. I'm going to show you the only slight difference. So if I'm looking for the percent of decrease, well, This is still whatever the percent out of 100, right? I stated up here, this never changes. So you've noticed that never changes. On the left ratio, the old or original is still in the denominator. However, you're telling me if I'm starting from an old number and I'm going down, that means the old number is the bigger number this time. So I will have to take the old minus the new. Now, these are one of the same, okay, guys? They're one of the same. So, this is one of the things I'm going to explain to you first. Make sure the numerators for these are positive. Because no matter how I subtract, I want to still know the difference between the two numbers. So I know it's going to be an increase, and then I know when it's going to be a decrease. Okay? So I'm going to still use one or the other. It really does not matter. It still uses the same format. The difference is whether it's going to be new minus old or old minus new. Same thing. It just depends on the numbers. Okay? Well, I am going to do at least two examples. I'm going to try to do one of an increase and one of a decrease so you can see how they both don't make a difference in which proportion to use. Okay. So we're going to work number 18. Number 18 is saying we're going to find the percent of increase or decrease. So for 18, I'm going from $246 to $221. All right, well, first things first, let me set up my proportion. Now, I know this side, again, is always going to be percent out of 100. But that's what we're looking for. We don't know it yet. Now, when they say from A to B, from X to Y, from 1 to 2, you should know the first number will have to be your original. So I'm going to label this O for my original. 221 is the new number. I went from this number to a brand new number. So I'm going to put N for new. So now, you know your original needs to go on the bottom. So this is going to be 246. The top part is determined by the amount of the difference. So how far apart or how much less is $221 away from 246? So I will have to subtract 246 minus 221. Again, use Desmos, use your calculator, you even work it on the side here, okay? You end up getting 25. Okay? So I still need to know the percent increase or decrease. Now we know this is a decrease. This is a decrease. So, I'm going to use cross multiplication. Now, I was informed that we learned this in 6th grade. How do we solve a proportion? You cross multiply. So I'm going to multiply the two numbers that are diagonal from each other easily. So I can do 25 times 100, which brings me to 2,500. And then I'm going to divide what's left. In this case, it's 246. So, now, I want us to round this to a whole number. So I'm going to get a decimal first. But I want to see what happens if we round it. So, when I did it, your calculations became 10.16%, but I want this round to the nearest whole number. All right, so I'm going to round this to 10%. Decrease. I want you to specify what is the percent of change. This one is a decrease. I went from a higher number to a lower number. Okay. We're going to do an increase question. Now, the numbers are going to be a little bit extreme. Okay. So let's look at 23. If I'm starting from 4,359 to 5,337 feet, well, first things first, let me set up my proportion. And again, this one is always percent out of 100. From this number, I am starting with this number, my original number, but I moved it up to the new number. So my old number has to go in the denominator, 4,359. Now, I need to find the amount of change. How much did I go from this number up to this number? So in this case, you have to do new minus old. And again, try to keep it where there's no negatives in it, okay? So again, use a calculator or do this by hand. 5,377 minus 4,359 should give me about 1,018. Okay. I still need to solve for the percent. I don't have it. So we're going to solve this proportion. Well, how do we do that? Cross multiply. So you're going to multiply the two numbers that are diagonal from each other. So of course, 1,018 times 100 gives me 101,800. And then you divide by the leftover number, which is 4,359. Now, I usually like to use these slides. I know you've seen me use these in previous videos, but I wanted you to understand that it means an estimate because I know I'm not going to have the exact answer. I want to give you the closest estimate possible. So it's just about, okay? Now, if I get this as a percent, I'm looking at 23.35%, but let's round that to a whole number. So I'm going to keep it to about 23%. Increase. I want you to understand this was increased by 23%. If you need to go back and watch the video, pause, go back and see if you could do the problem again on your own before you see my work. We will work more on these as well in class. Have a good evening, guys.